Welcome to part 2 of the previous video known as Mentalism or Discovering the Voice. Now in this section of the video, or in this second video, I'm going to specifically discuss now how these energies of polar opposites essentially create personalities. And in that sense, you could say that basically say that, to put it simply, you could say that everyone around you is based on your first interaction, your first mental input. When you step into space. But now let's identify how the process of the resonance or the frequency of this current kind of, you could say, awakens. And that current awakens when you use drugs, the forbidden fruit. Now you see, in the idea that there's polar opposites, right? Negative, positive. And they go like this, and this now creates your chakras, where this energy is constantly coursing like this. As above, so below, as below, so above. And you are here. But now let's talk about how drugs influence that experience. Well, for one, in the previous video, I was discussing how there is a extrovert, root chakra based person, and an introvert, an internal dominant person. The types of substances they use complement their personality typically. They will stimulate the opposite pole of their personality. And when they find that opposite pole, that's when they begin to become more themselves, essentially. Imagine if a person that is internal, also known as what's that word? You get the point. They're in their mind. What essentially happens is when they take a certain drug, they need something that makes them pull into their body. Whereas somebody that's root chakra, they need something that pulls them into their mind. And now you see the polar opposites of substances. There's uppers and there's downers. And typically, in order to rebalance the experience, the more up you go, the further down you have to go to come back up and bring an equilibrium. Because if you go one way too far, whether it be up or down, well, now you're lost. So how do you find yourself again? That is the beauty of finding the voice. You see, you are at this very particular point in the universe, right here, right now, where you are actively finding who that self is. Who is that voice? I am. which means that is you as an individual. But now when you find the perspective, and this is where it gets to the beauty of how you can actually beat schizophrenia, which is the idea of accepting mentalism, which is once you understand the concept of this entire process, essentially. You see, you beat schizophrenia the moment you choose to decide to make this very particular decision. And that decision is based around this question. Do I choose to continuously react to things in my mind and react to them physically, outward? And do I choose to act or let the external world influence my internal self? Regarding the question itself, the answer basically means, are you going to act as if it's real or not? Because that is the beauty of the wrestling match between God and Jacob. That is what is the crown known as Israel. To be crowned he who wrestles with God. And that idea is basically, are you the one that speaks, or are you the one that is listening? Because if you feel like you can't speak anymore because you are already heard, that means you have a chakra here that is not working properly. Because you are failing to be able to direct your mind and your voice at the same time. Because see, the wrestling match essentially is, are you able to speak your mind? Are you able to claim that? And are you able to stand that ground based on what you've claimed? Essentially, the crown which Jacob himself was rewarded with was simply based around the fact that he spoke the truth. That is what it means, the crown known as Israel. It is a title, which means he who wrestles with God, which means he who wrestles with speaking the truth. And he who struggles with speaking the truth is the one that gets moved. You get pushed back rather than pushing the energy forward. Life either happens to you or you make it happen to life. And essentially, once you get to the point of, are you going to speak the truth? Are you going to truly speak the first thing that comes to your mind and speak it as it occurs to you? Because that is the wrestling match. And it has layers. You can get pinned on your body, or you can get pinned in your mind. But basically the idea is it's half and half. Body, mind, making one self known as a human, a self-aware individual with an aware mind. And just as Nikola Tesla could point out that energy can be transferred from point A to point B in space without the use of a line, but by simply running sound. How do you think my voice travels to you right now? Through sound. How do you think you hear this? Through sound, and it is a resonance. And that is what the mind is. It's a resonance. When you stand still in that resonance, let's bring it to the drug experience for a second. Where in the drug experience, you either speed up the process at which time is experienced, or you slow it down. That is all that drugs do. Uppers speed up the process of your processing of time, and downers slow down the processing at which you process the speed of time. And what this essentially causes is it causes your opposite polar shift. And it makes you become who you are under the influence of that substance, obviously. But who are you without the use of those substances now? Well, now you are a troubled person because you are afraid to accept your mind because you react to it too much. And then the idea is, if you've done too many drugs in your life, you've entered essentially psychosis, which means you have slowed down time, that you made it come to a standstill where you were now the only thing vibrating or resonating through time. And now you entered psychosis, which is you are audibly hearable through your mind. Freaky, right? Unfortunately, you need to stop reacting to that. You've entered the mind, which is where you discover the sense known as intuition. And if your intuition is surgically precise, then you do not get to tell you, and you do not get to tell me that the experience of the mind and its mentalist state is not a real experience, because I have found a way to explain it to a degree that is understandable, yet complex enough, but simply enough to understand. You have to realize that your mind is real. But you have to make the decision of what you speak into the world. Because essentially what you speak becomes true. You've claimed it into this world. Until then, the mind is just like a river, a current flowing by, a sound flowing by. That is what the mind is. It is that current. And unless if you claim it, it's just background noise. It's up to you. to know when to react and when not to react. Because the moment you reveal the voice, which is the moment you activate a frequency resonant match where you actually pull the mind and vocalize it in the same pitch of sound as it is coming to you, well, then you've entered the language arts, and that is a fierce battlefield.